All right, we are live. Welcome to our Peel Good Apple Festival. This has been a really fun experience to put together 9 days worth of events here at Will and Yurtsville Grange, which is just outside of Pullman, Washington, which, as most of you know, is the home of Washington State University. Washington State University is a land-grant college, and the Grange has a long history of supporting initial legislation that helped establish land-grant colleges and legislation that's helped fund it or make robust the research opportunities at land grants. So tonight we're really excited to present a program about Washington's kind of premier crop, or at least what I would consider a premier crop, which is apples. And we have with us an amazing scholar. I've gotten to read your background, Dr. Kate Evans, and I can't even begin to start synthesizing all of the research and work that you've done. So I would love to let you introduce yourself a little bit more in depth. But Kate Evans is a professor at WSU, and she studies all things horticulture, but specifically has gotten into running the Apple Research Lab. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can make my screen share. Let me know when it comes through. It's in the ether somewhere. Okay, so I actually I run WSU's home fruit breeding program, which is more than just apple. It's apple science and rootstock for pear. But for the sake of today, I'm going to focus totally on apples because this is the Apple Festival, right? Are you getting any content?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're going to do a picture-in-picture and see if we can get that up. In the meantime, if anybody is in the Pullman area, they are welcome to stop by, and we're going to be able to have some samples of some stuff that Dr. Evans is going to talk about at the end of the presentation. So hopefully, if you are here in Pullman area, 4902 State Route 27. And Dr. Evans, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Yeah, I can see content now, so that's good. Excellent. Yeah, so as I said, I run the apple breeding program. I've been at Washington State University for about 17 years now. And prior to that, you might be able to tell from my accent, I ran a program, similar program in the UK for about 16 years. So I've now just tipped the balance and spent more of my career in the US than in the UK. So what I'm going to do today, Amanda asked me to kind of cover all sorts of things, but what I'm going to do, it's got a fancy title, Cosmic to Cutting Edge, okay? What I thought I'd do is talk a bit about why apples do so well in the state of Washington. I mean, it is our premier crop, right? And then talk through really what I do in terms of contribution to that. So how we make new varieties of apple. What I'm going to do is put it all in the context of the next new variety, which I'll talk about, but also remembering that Cosmic Crisp is to date the fastest adopted new variety of apple ever, actually. And so that one came out from this program in 2017. Okay, so let's get into this. So absolutely, this is not just my work. There's a lot of people's names up there. It's important to acknowledge other people's contributions. Definitely isn't a solo project. And I have the Tree Fruit Research Commission up there because for many years they funded the apple breeding program. They fund an awful lot of supporting research for everything tree fruit within the state of Washington. Okay, so first of all, why do apples grow so well here? So this is my sort of relatively old-ish map showing average annual precipitation within the state. And it's pretty different in terms of color. You can see what a range of precipitation we have right over from temperate rainforest to what is effectively desert here in the Columbia Basin. Most of our apple production is in this pretty much a desert-like region within the center of the state. And that low precipitation is one of the benefits, one of the reasons why apples do so well here. It means we have incredibly low humidity. That is responsible for stopping a lot of disease pressure, particularly fungal diseases. So many other production areas around the world have a lot of challenges with fungal disease. But here in Washington, in central Washington, in terms of apple fungal diseases, we're really we don't have much of a challenge at all, which is also why we are extremely good at producing organic apples here as well. There are definitely other factors about why apples grow so well here. We have great day to night temperature differences as we get to this time of the year. That really helps the fruit to color, which of course is attractive in many varieties. And we get great cold winters. That's important for apple and for many other crops as well, because it means that they get sufficient winter chill hours that stimulates flower bud production for the following year's crop. It's not all perfect though. You know, we are definitely seeing changes. We're seeing hotter summers and we're seeing cold spells in the winter at slightly different times. And those are certainly things that are stressing trees. And that is a research as a whole in terms of apple in the state of Washington, we are having to spend more time trying to understand and address. So going back to that the big picture really of annual precipitation, we manage dealing with this low precipitation here by irrigation. This is actually a picture of a cherry orchard. I figured I'd brighten up a bit. It's not all apple, right? Just to illustrate what irrigation looks like in the orchard. If we left without irrigating our land, this is typical. So this is very typical native land here within the state. And this beautiful patch of green, in this case, is a vineyard. I'm trying to give you a few different crops, is the irrigated bit, right? Very, very clear differences. So how can we do this? One of the reasons is that we've got this fantastic irrigation structure, particularly when you move into the Columbia Basin. This structure of, first of all, dams with hydroelectric power. We have, I think, the cheapest electricity probably in the country. Certainly in my county, we pay 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That is really, really cheap. And what it does is it enables growers to pump water through some of this system. So the canal system goes all the way through much of the production region of the state. And that just enables that whole irrigation to happen. Okay, so really, fundamentally, that is why we do so well at growing apples in the state of Washington. We have, we sell our fruit to all states within the US, but I just thought it might be quite interesting to put up some idea of exports for you. Currently, we are producing somewhere around about 140 million boxes or cartons, which are approximately 40 pounds each. That number varies a little bit in terms of total production. But just to show you, these were 2022 figures, and we were exporting at that point only about 22 million boxes of our about 140 million. So that's not to say 22 million boxes is insignificant. It's absolutely significant. But as a whole, the bulk of our crop is sold within the US. We struggle a little at the moment with tariffs. That's definitely impacting our ability to export. So getting back to my deal, so why are we breeding apples in Washington? Okay, so I've kind of given you an illustration of why apples grow so well here. You know, new products are what we all crave. They really bring excitement back into any industry. Consumers are always looking for something new. So new products are really the lifeblood of an industry, and apple varieties, like any other product, can become obsolete. They can just really kind of go out of style. People choose something different, something new, something interesting. And for many, many years, in fact, pretty much up until about the last less than 10 years, every apple that we are growing here has been introduced from abroad. So in other words, it's from a breeding program in a different environment to Washington. And as I've said, we have a pretty unique environment. And I just wanted to illustrate, this is a pretty extreme illustration showing you the apple in the middle is Jazz. That's a great apple. It comes from New Zealand. The apples on either side of it are a couple of selections from my program. The one on the left is Cosmic Crisp, which is a big apple, I'll give you that. But one of the challenges that we have with Jazz, for example, is actually getting it to size, even to become more than just, a really tiny little bite-sized apple. And that's one of those issues of selecting a variety in a very, very different environment. And the other reason why we want to breed apples here in Washington is to have accessibility for our industry. So I put Pink Lady up here as an example. I hope many of you have heard of Pink Lady or Crips Pink. Pink Lady as a variety is very restricted in terms of who has access to it. Growers have to pay a license fee. It's fairly weighty license fee to get into the Pink Lady Club. To even get the trees and to grow and sell the fruit under the Pink Lady brand. WSU is a land-grant university. Our mission is to help all growers within the state of Washington, hence the need for this breeding program. So very simplistically, to kind of address all of those things and pull them together, the aim of my program is to produce what I call a portfolio of new, improved, unique varieties that are especially selected for the environment of central Washington, particularly, and that are available to Washington's growers. And again, I've got in here the Tree Fruit Research Commission because they've been a major partner in everything to do with the breeding program.
Dr. Evans, can I ask, you mentioned that you're a land-grant university, as I mentioned at the top. What does that mean as far as the licensing versus something like Pink Lady for a grower or for somebody who's just a hobbyist?
It means that it is available to all producers within the state of Washington. As a hobbyist within the state of Washington, you can purchase trees of Cosmic Crisp. I mean, really, that's the only one, as an example, right now that's out there. You can find them in various different stores. I've certainly seen them in quite strange places for sale. So there are no license restrictions as such for producing Cosmic Crisp in the state of Washington.
And then what does that mean for producers who may be outside the state in areas that they believe they could take that variety or others that have been made by WSU?
Yeah, currently they can't. So the view being, Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission is a levy-funded organization. It collects levies from all Washington commercial tree fruit producers, and that funds research. And in this case, it funded the first 20 years of the breeding program. And so not only is it our land grant mission is for Washington, but sort of over and above that, our funding has been very Washington focused. And the view has always been that we should be giving back to our Washington growers that first opportunity to really have the new varieties that are produced as a result of their funding.
That's really interesting. And I guess, is there another program kind of similar to that in any other area in either the Washington state or in another land grant or another state that you know of for any other crop?
Yeah, so Cornell, for example, for their apple breeding program, they have licensed and formed a cooperative of New York growers who had the access to specific varieties that were coming out of their program. Yeah, so it's not a one-off, and there are many ways that you can release a new variety, and every single one of them has its challenges. I would never say that any of them are perfect, but what our aim was to really help our growers within the state of Washington who have fundamentally funded much of this program, certainly to give them that advantage.
Sure. And I'll take a second to just remind our viewers, anyone who's out there live right now, you can put something in the comments if you have any questions, and obviously I'll be asking our folks here. So I'll let you keep going and I'll interrupt in just a few minutes.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's great. I love it when people ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to switch into breeding fully now. So this is what I do on a daily basis, but obviously it's very seasonal, as everything to do with tree fruit is. So I run what we call a conventional breeding program. I basically am doing what the bee does, just in a little bit of a more controlled, precise way. So what I've tried to do is from here onwards, I've got the different stages of the program that I currently run. But I've tried to give you the dates that are very specific to the next new variety, which is WA64 or Sunflare. So kind of keep coming back to those dates to have an idea of just the length of a breeding program. So when I talk about doing what the bee does, as a breeder, what I'm looking for are what am I targeting? What two parents might I try and combine to get better quality offspring from those two parents? So what can they each contribute? And in this case, when this cross was made in 1998, what we did was take pollen from the Crips Pink, which is also licensed as Pink Lady, and then used it to brush onto stigmas of the Honeycrisp apples. So apple flowers have both male and female parts, pollen obviously being the male part. So we collect always from these closed but swollen flower buds, and then prepare female flowers just to leave the stigmas, the female part, and then just brush on the pollen to the stigmas, wait. We then, in this case, would obviously get a Honeycrisp apple on our Honeycrisp tree. But what I want as the breeder, I want the seeds, because each of those seeds is unique, and it is a unique combination between its mother, in this case Honeycrisp, and its father, in this case Crips Pink. So, right, we all know this, but sometimes I have to remind people, apple trees do not come true to type from seed. So if you plant a seed from a Honeycrisp apple, you will not get a Honeycrisp tree. You'll get a tree that is genetically half Honeycrisp and half whatever its pollen parent was. And so what my job is all about, evaluating this material to select the best individuals. They all look really similar at this stage, right? All those seeds look the same. This is a picture of my greenhouse in the spring. It's a sea of green. Everything looks really similar. But just to try and illustrate this point, this is a slide I put together a number of years ago of a fairly diverse extreme cross, right? This parent on the left here, the sort of larger one, was the mother in this case, and the small purpley apple was representative of the pollen parent. I did that same procedure, collected the seeds, grew them up, planted them, got trees, and then collected an apple from each of those trees. And what you have around the outside are those seedling apples. So each one of these apples is genetically half this apple on the left and half this apple on the right. But they've got all the characteristics mixed up. Segregating is a term that we use. And it's really similar to humans, right? If you've got your family and your mother and your father, you and your siblings are genetically, you've got the same parents, but you're all different. Some of you might look more like your mother. For example, this apple up here on the top right looks more like its mother, right? And then there are a few apples around here that look a little bit more like their pollen parent. So certainly characteristics are inherited in the same way that they are with humans. You know, it might be the shape of your nose, or whether your ears stick out, or what color your eyes are, all that kind of stuff. And of course, what we're looking at here and talking about are those characteristics that we see, but internally within the apple as well. All of the genetic control for the internal attributes are also segregating. So that goes with all of the texture and the flavor, as well as how the tree performs. Okay, so because our trees don't come true to type from seed, if we want to make more of the same tree, we vegetatively propagate. And again, I'm sure you all know this, but just kind of getting everybody on the same page, what a tree is that is in the orchard and that you would buy from a nursery is what we call a composite plant. So it has the scion, the aerial fruiting part, so the galas, the honeycrisp, the cosmic crisp. And then it also has a rootstock, which is the non-fruiting part of the tree. And there are many different varieties of rootstock as well. And a grower would choose a rootstock according to the kind of the growing conditions that they have, or how they want to grow their orchard. And so the scion is then just propagated. It's just take a bud, put it onto the rootstock. The bud grows out, becomes the main trunk of the tree, or the leader. And there you go. You've got another tree the same. Okay, so back to this story of how we make new varieties. So we've had our pollination, right? This is that WA64 date and the timeline. Seeds were germinated in spring 1999. It's a long time ago now. And then what we did was to propagate each seedling onto a rootstock, because what we wanted to have was some uniformity in our orchard. And you can see that this is when they're planted out in that orchard. These trees, they're all different, but they're all a sort of similar height. And you can see that many of them, I think you can probably see, many of them are starting to have fruit. So this is what
Evans, how long does it take for the tree from being planted to having the fruit for the first time?
Yes, good question. So you can see that it's already taken, we don't plant these until, in this case, it was 2002. So they were propagated actually in 2000. So it takes 18 months for the tree to grow in the nursery to get just that. Usually they're about 6 foot tall when we get them. Fantastic nursery that we work with. What we'll typically do is we won't let them fruit in the first year after we've planted them in the orchard, because we want them to grow structure. So even if they're blooming, we'll usually just remove the bloom or remove the fruitlets, just to get them really established. And by the second year in the orchard, then we'll start to be looking at fruit. If we didn't put them on a rootstock, it would probably take longer than that. That is an effect that a rootstock has. It does push things into fruiting sooner as a seedling. So that is part of this uniformity deal, trying to kind of keep some similarity in the orchard. This is what my orchard looks like today. And in fact, what I'm doing an awful lot of the time at this time of year specifically is I'm out in the orchard every week, walking all my seedling rows. I have about, at any one time, 10,000 or so different seedling trees, slightly different ages, but that are fruiting. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to select the best individuals from that seedling block. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm selecting initially on appearance. So I'm walking down these rows. Am I stopped in my track by some gorgeous looking apple? Yes, frequently. And when I am, then it's a case of, is that apple ready to harvest? Because I'm harvesting from kind of middle of August to the end of October. So there's a big range of maturity. And then if it is ready to harvest, I'll take a bite. And does it pass the bite test? Very simple bite test. You know, a lot of them are awful, but the bite test is usually pretty good. A lot of spitting at this stage as well, because you definitely wouldn't want to swallow all of that.
So the question in the room is how long into this process do you get sick of apples and not want to bite anything?
Well, this is probably, what is this? My 33rd harvest. I've been doing it for a long time. But I have to honestly say, I mean, you'll hear as I go into this, we evaluate fruit all the way through storage as well. But there are certain times of the year after that where I don't eat anything to do with apple ever. And I will never be that person who goes out to dinner and orders apple pie. No, it's not going to happen, right? Yeah, so a lot of tasting. Haven't found anything that replaces that bite and mouthfeel of an apple. I wish I had, but I haven't. Okay, so when an apple, a seedling apple, passes that bite test, then I'll take a sample. And what we do is we store the fruit for 2 months in refrigerated storage. So I have a big cold room off my lab, and fruit just goes in there every week. I put it in storage for 2 months because this state of Washington produces this massive crop, and we want to sell fruit for 12 months of the year. And if my seedling fruit won't store for 2 months, it just does not, it's not going to make it in a commercial setting. So 2 months is a really short amount of time for a piece of fruit to store. Some of them don't make it. Okay. After that, we pull the fruit out and we do various different laboratory evaluations. I can't call them lab evaluations, but it's a fruit lab. So there's a lot of eating, and it's not like a lab with lots of chemistry in it. We check on the maturity of our fruit. We check the texture. Oh, sorry, wrong screen. This gadget has a little probe, and it punctures the fruit, gives us an idea of firmness. And then we juice fruit to measure acidity and sugars. Those are really the two main players when it comes to how a piece of fruit tastes. And then we do way loads of sensory assessment. And so myself and usually at least 2, possibly 3 other members of my team will go through and taste all the fruit that we have out every week. So remember, I said we're harvesting from the middle of August through to the end of October. And so every week of that plus 2 months, we're doing this. Okay, so it is a lot of fruit evaluation. But we do a good job. It's pretty well evaluated. So that was this first phase. So anything that's good passes that first phase, becomes what we call an advanced selection. And then what I'm doing is that vegetative propagation to make more copies of the same thing. And I make 15 copies. I plant 5 in each of 3 different sites, north, central, and south within that central part of the state. Because I've got 5 trees in each site, I can do lots more evaluation. We can harvest at different time points, really to try and optimize the maturity of the fruit that we're sampling. And we can collect loads of data to make then a decision about moving something forward into what we call an elite selection. I should say that in phase 2, at any one point in time, I might have about 40 different selections. By the time we get to the 3rd phase, we're down to about 4 or 5. But what we try and do is put about 50 trees in, and often we're in a grower site here. We have a couple of different sites, and we want the grower to farm the tree as they would be farming their orchard. And at this point, because we've got 50 trees or so, we can do much more of the sort of large volume evaluation that really we need to do to be confident about the varieties we're releasing. And so for this apple, WA64, it went into this phase in 2015. Here you can see the some of what happens in that phase. This is typically when I bring stakeholders into the program a lot more. I'll give fruit samples out at earlier phases, but I don't have a massive amount of fruit, so I'm a bit limited in terms of the sort of feedback I can get. once we hit this third phase with these 50 trees or so, then it's much more interactive. Fantastic stakeholders here in the state. These folk are so knowledgeable about how to grow fruit trees, and they give me incredibly candid opinions. You know, we'll stand in front of a tree and it's kind of, well, yeah, I could probably make that work. I'll just, you know, snip here, pull that branch and whatever, and they make it work. Or they'll say no. So also in this phase, we get much more production information. We can do more storage because we've got bins worth of fruit. We can store fruit for 6 months, 9 months, and beyond. We can run fruit on a sorting line to see how it stands out. And then we can rate for pack out, and that's really important. And by pack out, I mean what percentage of the fruit in the orchard actually gets to the hands of the consumer. So in other words, what sort of flaws are there in it? Are there disorders? How is it being graded? And what we want, obviously, is for these varieties to have a high pack out, so there's much less food waste, and we're producing more apples that the grower then will be able to sell. We can do consumer preference tests at this point as well. With WA64, we hit the joys of COVID. We were absolutely ready to do our consumer preference test in spring 2020. Nobody wanted to do any kind of public eating event. That was just, okay, so what are we going to do? It took us till 2022 to manage to do any kind of consumer preferencing for this apple. And this was our compromise situation. We did some outdoor tasting, and this was actually at Wenatchee Apple Blossom Festival in 2022. We also did some tastings in Yakima at a wine cellar opening. So, you know, that's it worked, but it was frustratingly slow to get it up and running. We usually just give consumers our new selection with one other apple, and it's usually one of the parents or something that it's quite similar to enable the consumers just to say which they prefer for whatever particular reason. And you can see just some of the descriptions that they came up with for the WA64. So having decided to release it, we also have to do a little bit more than that. We have to be able to provide information to a grower about how to grow it. Every apple variety has its little specifics. What's the best way to grow it? Which rootstock? There are many, many different recommendations that help a grower to succeed. In this case, we were lucky enough to get some Washington State Department of Ag specialty crop block grant funding, and also some funding from Washington Research Foundation. And I persuaded a couple of colleagues of mine to come in and really help run this. This guy in the picture is Dr. Stefano Masaki. He's based here in Wenatchee with me. And he planted a research block in one of our WSU orchards here in Wenatchee. And then another colleague, Benedita Salato, planted a sister orchard, what we call a demonstration block, at the WSU Rosa orchard. What we have in each site is our WA64 trees on 4 different rootstocks with either what we call spindle or biaxis. So that means it's got a single leader, single tree trunk, or it's a double. And the double is often there to try and split the vigor of the tree. So one rootstock with 2 central leaders. And we have 400 trees in each site, and that went in the ground in 2022. So we're starting to gain some really good information from that block. We also have to work out how to release the variety. And as I said earlier on, getting the variety out to the growers, every variety is released in a slightly different way. In this case, for the WA64, as was the case with Cosmic Crisp, all of the nurseries in Washington have got, they now have mother trees established. So a mother tree is a tree that has a lot of budwood on it that enables the nursery to make many new copies of that original tree. In the case of WA64, we licensed a group called the International New Varieties Network. They have experience with licensing new material. WSU doesn't really have that business capability. You know, we are an educational institute, and we typically want to partner with somebody when it comes to the sort of licensing and release. We have a patent for the WA64. WSU owns the intellectual property. And we now have a name. Sunflare is the name that this apple will be released under. We had a competition in this case to get the Sunflare name, and we had more than 15,000 entries. That was a huge Excel spreadsheet that I had the joy of going through on a fairly long flight back from the UK. I think that was last year, but it was a lot of names. So Sunflare was the winner. But what's next in this is that we can't just leave it at the name. With an apple, you know, apples are sold by name, but they're also sold by brand image. It's more than just the name that the consumer recognizes. And so just like we did with Cosmic Crisp and develop a brand image, we have to work on doing something similar for Sunflare. And that is exactly where we are right now with this apple. We're in the middle of trying to develop a brand and to work with our Washington marketing committee to help us develop a plan to get this apple out to consumers. Our expectation is that it will probably be 2027, 2028 before there's any fruit in the marketplace. And at that point, it will be very small volumes. I'm almost done. I just wanted to kind of give you a little run through of what happened with Cosmic Crisp on this. So Cosmic Crisp was really the first major release from the breeding program. It is a Washington-only apple in the US for 10 years. That was the release structure. That length of time is still to be debated. We could extend it. Initially, because there was not very much budwood to make more trees, we were limited to only having about 600,000 trees available in the first spring of planting, which was 2017. After that, there was a lot more wood available. There was a lot of interest. This apple fitted perfectly with what growers were looking for at that point in time. And we're now at somewhere around about 22 million trees of Cosmic Crisp in the ground in the state of Washington. First fruit sales were December the 1st, 2019. So again, we hit that wonderful COVID winter. But we have kind of weathered the storm, and we're now currently 5th in volume within the state of Washington. So that's a pretty major achievement in a really quite short amount of time.
So when you said that you guys could extend this, I assume that that's another 10 years, kind of like folks in pharmaceuticals or whatever can do in order to make sure that they're well established in the market before there's other competitors there. And in this case, not so much about creating a generic form of Cosmic Crisp, but really creating a brand standard and having then the additional, supply to the Washington growers of that monetary value, right?
Well, Washington produces about 65% of the US crop. So we are the major player in the US anyway. We could open it up outside of the state at any point beyond the 10 years, but my understanding is that we can negotiate and keep it longer. You have to understand I'm not the lawyer, right? So I'm the breeder. But what is important with an apple is to maintain the brand. The patent of the apple has a lifetime, not a lifetime, it has a life, right? It runs out. And at that point, well, it could be available, but the brand name is the thing that we could keep control of for as long as we do a good job keeping control of it. And that's why it is so important to develop a good name and protect the brand, because I mean it gives you that long-term security of the intellectual property. And so, yeah, I was just going to really finish off by saying, well, you could say kind of, so what's next? You know, I sort of, we're here at number 5 with Cosmic Crisp. We're releasing WA64. I talked about at the beginning, you know, my aim is this portfolio of new improved varieties. And so, you know, what's next really for me is more new varieties. And this is my final slide. I get all the time, why do we need more varieties? We're confused by how many there are in the marketplace. My view is that word improved in terms of varieties is hugely important. And that there are a lot of varieties that are now moving into becoming obsolete and should probably be removed from production. They're not helping the grower to really make any kind of profit. And they're also not exciting for our consumers. We're not generating that excitement that new varieties will bring to the marketplace. And we have to compete with all this other fresh fruit. You know, it's not just another apple, okay? You know, all that, you know, the cherries, the grapes, the blueberries, they're all doing a great job at putting out fresh fruit products. And we need new apple varieties that get our consumers excited about apples and get them buying and eating more of them. So that's all I have to say. I'm quite happy to answer any questions that you throw at me, or I should say, attempt to answer any questions that you throw at me.
So the question here was, how many varieties did you go through to get to this one, the Sunflare, which we're very excited about. The anticipation is killing me.
Well, similarly to Cosmic Crisp, I mean, at any point, I'll have somewhere around about 10,000 seedlings in that first phase. You know, it's not a one-off. That what happens every year is that material, it's like a conveyor belt, right? Sort of material moves forward through the program, but it's also like a funnel. So at the beginning, there's an awful lot of different material, and much of it is really not good. But you know, as you sort of make more selection and reduce down to find the best individuals, that's the fun part, right?
Have you had any heirloom varieties that you've used and have gotten kind of further in the program than just that initial cut? Or I guess a mix of the heirloom and new varieties? I know that there were a couple of kind of ancient heirloom varieties found here in Whitman County in the past couple of years. So,
yeah, I haven't used any of the varieties from the Palouse as such. I've used I mean, the thing with apple is there are an awful lot of apples that you can class as being heirloom. If you just kind of, I was just going to grab a book off my shelf, but of course it's never quite where I think it is. I mean, you know, I think the National Collection has got 5,000 plus different varieties of apple. I mean, there are a lot. I have used several heirloom or heirloom types. I'm always interested in if they can bring in particularly kind of unique flavors, or in some cases, heirloom varieties can also bring in some of that long storability, because there were varieties back in the day, where you'd put them in your barn and they'd keep through till sort of January or February or so, and give you that bit of fresh fruit at that point in time. They might not taste great, but there wasn't very much around during that season to compete. My personal view, I mean, you have to remember, this is what I do for a living. I make new varieties. People don't like this, but I will say my view is that heirloom varieties are not commercially produced for a reason.
I mean, somebody probably stopped picking that apple in the field at some point.
Well, or it had perhaps what we call a fatal flaw. And, that can be anything. It can just be that maybe from that getting back to that idea of pack out, where perhaps only a small proportion of the fruit that comes from the tree would be in good enough quality to get to the consumer, disorders or other issues.
Any other questions from our room here? Has there ever been a variety that you were really hot on and then it had one of those fatal flaws, or you just were disappointed in the reaction from your kind of mass group or your small sample?
Oh, the ones that got away. Yes, and that is one of the problems of doing this, is that we all, all of us in the team, at a certain point, there's that favorite apple that you just absolutely love, and then something happens, and the worst ones are the ones that you pick them as seedlings and they're just stunning, and you think, oh yes, it's a fantastic apple, and then 2 months later you get it out of cold storage and it's just this kind of mush, right? And it's heartbreaking. I mean, seriously,
like you can't be applesauce or something, like, come on.
No, it's not going to make anybody any money. And fundamentally, unfortunately, that is what we have to do. We've got to kind of keep the economics in mind.
Sure. And last question, I guess I have, besides thanking you so much for taking time tonight to do this, and hopefully it allows us to share this program well beyond just here and the folks who viewed it tonight, but with other Grange members and Granges across the country who could have it as an educational series. But if you were to put a mark on the wall for your career, how many new apple varieties would you like to shepherd to market to consider yourself successful? You always add something hard at the end.
Well, I would like to think at this point that I have achieved a reasonable level of success within my career. I feel pretty content with having shifted. I mean, I've had people say, okay, now Cosmic Crisp has raised the bar. So that's really satisfying to hear, really satisfying to stand in I sometimes stand in the grocery shop and or store, sorry, and just kind of watch people's purchasing, and those, I just love those people that just go straight up to the Cosmic Crisp and put it in their cart without even thinking, and it just warms my heart, right?
Yeah.
I'd love, okay, so what I would love, you asked me what what I'm looking for is a good yellow or green, and that's very difficult. Red hides all sorts of things. A good clean yellow or green apple, my team will all sort of say, but there's only yellow and greens out there at the moment. I'll go, yes. So that's what I would love, something to replace our fairly old standards of yellow and green that gives a better eating experience to the consumer.
Well, I think we're looking forward to that. So when we hear of a yellow or a green apple, we will know where it came from.
I hope so.
Thank you so much again for joining us. We are going to do a wonderful taste test here, thanks to you getting us these amazing. And they're a little smaller than the Cosmic Crisp, but
They
I've
are.
heard they are a little sweeter. So we're gonna get to taste these tonight. And I will definitely not only send you a thank you for doing this, but a little sampling of some discussion from our group here.
Great. Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again so much. And for those of you viewing, we do have events for the rest of the week, including the next 2 nights, which you can do virtual or here with us at our Grange Hall. I'll look at how Grange has impacted lives well outside of the state of Washington, but Washington residents since before its founding as a state. Thursday, we have Apple of My Eye, where we have some folks coming to talk about taking great photos and writing about people that you love in compelling ways. Friday, we have bingo because it's always a great standard and some wonderful local prizes and folks who have given us some things to be part of our prize group there. And then on Saturday, we're doing a potluck with all of our Grange friends. So if you haven't joined the Grange yet, reach out. So thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.